Okay, everyone, thanks for joining us today. We're going to be talking about smart lockers and how they're acting as a backbone to transforming workplaces. A very quick introduction for myself. I'm Jonathan Knott. I'm the founder and managing director of Hublock, the smart locker company. We're a UK manufacturer based in Essex, and we are Metra Smart Lock UK distributor, and they're a global main player in the actual technology. And joining me today on the stage, we've got John and James from Bryn Mawr, and I'm going to quickly hand you over for a quick intro.
Thanks, Jonathan. We are Bryn Mawr is a specialist advisory, and what we do is we help our clients with workplace transformation. We have mainly corporate sector clients, but also work for some of the big TFMs, and really take them through a journey of discovery, design, optimize, to help them as a success multiplier on their journey to workplace transformation.
Brilliant. Thanks, guys. So what I'd like to understand really from you guys is what changes have you seen in the last few years being on the front line when you're consulting?
I guess there's been quite a few changes. I took a couple of notes before we came, but I think if you go back probably about 5 years ago, you would have seen an increase already in telephone conferencing, slightly less face-to-face meetings. I think probably one of the biggest ones is businesses now starting to have to compete for talent. Certainly we see that in some of the major law firms, some of the major financial sectors. So again, when certainly I started in the office, coffee was a mug, a spoon, a kettle, and Nescafe. Nowadays, if you're not providing, bean to cup, £2,000 coffee machines, then your talent's not going to come and join your office. That's for sure. I think we've also seen back then a move towards slightly less fixed desks, so and a little bit more towards slightly collaborative workspaces. Certainly some quiet workspaces and meeting rooms, and a little bit around flexible working. But flexible working, I think 5 years ago, was allowing you that if you had the washing machine man coming on a Monday morning, you could work from home on Monday morning and come in the afternoon, as opposed to where we've got to now over the last sort of few years, sort of since COVID. We've kind of seen the workplace has now stabilized into a much more even environment. Businesses are struggling now to attract people to come back into the office. So obviously everyone's gone through that work from home. And I think most people probably have heard the acronym TWATS, Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays. So most people nowadays are in the office those 3 days, but not in the office on a kind of Monday and Friday. Video and conferencing is probably the biggest change that we've all seen, and the swing from face-to-face meetings now to using video conferencing for meetings as the norm, and almost actually replacing phone calls. I'll get requests now for a Teams meeting rather than just something that could be tackled on a simple phone call, because that's a kind of habit we've got into. And the move, I think, definitely with everyone working from home, that sort of move to digitalization has definitely come along. If you take something like printing, few people print now. During the initial stages of COVID, we were asked around home printers. We probably had about 40 or 50 inquiries from different companies saying, I need to get some home printers. And funny enough, no one's ever bought any of them. And nowadays we're seeing, certainly within the offices, at least a 30% reduction kind of in the printing. So if that gives you a sort of rough idea of what we're seeing when we're auditing some of the clients in terms of that.
That's brilliant. Thank you, John. Obviously, that's the last few years, but where do you feel we are now and the next few years? Where's the workplace heading?
Well, I guess the key is how do you now work in a totally different environment to a few years ago? So I think I kind of tried to pick up 2 or 3 of the challenges that are in there. I think the biggest one is space planning. So if you imagine you get 80% of your staff in on a Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, but you've only got 30% of your staff on a Monday and Friday, well, how do you plan your real estate to have that. Just, do you buy 80% real estate, but on a Monday and Friday, that's not going to be used. So I think space planning is probably one of the biggest ones. We're certainly seeing now a lot of where businesses are looking to move. They're looking to do two key things. One is to look at a smaller amount of fixed space. So they're maybe buying 70% of the real estate they would have had before, and then topping up for those Mondays and Fridays with more flexible working space. So things like the WeWork, that kind of space where they can flex up and down pretty easily. We're seeing things like meeting room usage. Again, we wandered around and had a look. There's the Internet of Things. So there's a whole load of people doing monitors of all sorts. So you've got desk monitors, you've got people monitors, you've got flow monitors that are out there that you can put. And one of the things that people are looking at is that traditionally you'd have a whole set of meeting rooms. Some 4-person meeting rooms, some 8-person meeting rooms, 10-person, 12-person. And what they're now looking at is what's the occupancy in those actual meeting rooms. We've all gone to companies whereby you sit in a 6-person meeting room, and there's just 2 of you. So it's all about how do you now have the right meeting space. So we're starting to see certainly meeting room changes so that you can change. You're having a space now which is more flexible, where you've got sort of sliding multiple doors. So you can go from a 4 to an 8 to a 12 to a 16 room if you need it. So I think that's one of the areas. Flexible desking. We're all creatures of habit. And I think, unfortunately, the older you get, when you join the market space, when I first started, they had typewriters, unfortunately, but you'd have a desk and that was your desk. No one else used your desk. You'd have a pedestal attached to it. And we're certainly seeing now businesses are looking and saying, you don't have a desk anymore. There isn't a desk with John Hawes above it. What you will have is a flexible working space. And for that desking, obviously, then you need that various solution in terms of that. We're seeing some zoned offices for different usage. So collaborative spaces, things like, again, a couple of the large corporates that we work with have now got desking in the what I would call the staff restaurant. So they're encouraging people to come into the restaurant. They've moved services into the restaurant. So things like your smart lockers, postal services, mailroom services are brought in there, along with encouraging staff to hold a more open meeting within the actual workspace in there. And again, I think I mentioned earlier, the percentage of office space that's more flexible. So it's becoming a serviced office. I think the other flip side is home workers. So not so much what you provide them with. Certainly during COVID, most people got a keyboard, a screen, a mouse, maybe 2 screens if you were really lucky. My daughter worked for HSBC, and I think they gave her £150 to buy a proper chair so that she could sit at the table. But it's more, how do you now interact with the business when you're working from home? So it's things like deliveries, collection, IT. So how does IT support, IT equipment work in there? And things like post, couriers, again, which are all very much geared up to deliver to office hubs, but not necessarily to homes. So how does that come about? So I guess that's the kind of changes that we're seeing now, Jonathan.
That's brilliant. But coming from your side, where you're advising and looking at the general sort of strategy, trying to improve efficiency, what have you done with some good examples, basically? What clients have you worked with, and what have you actually added?
I'll let James answer some of that, but I kind of thought about two big examples. So we work with a very, very large North American-based technology company. And in fact, we work with you, Jonathan. They had a huge mail shipping staff. They had a mail shipping operation with about 350 staff. And they were looking to transform that into a modern operating facility. And in terms of that, they were looking at kind of 3 key areas, I would have said. They were looking at the experience of the end user. So how did the end user interact with the business? They were looking at a cost reduction in terms of people, so the kind of return on investment for all of that side, and also reducing their real estate. Because again, if you're running an operation with 350 staff and you come down to about 150, you can start using that real estate for elsewhere. And then we working currently with a large global law firm. And again, there we're looking at things like chain of custody. So we're modernizing their mail and print services. So they're looking at saying, okay, how do I offer a 24/7 service to the business, but with staff that are maybe only there 5 days a week, 12 hours a day? So kind of leading into your products, that's where both in North America, we took your products over there, and I know you're going to talk about them in a minute, but we found it was more, it was less expensive to buy your product in the UK than to buy any of the other products that were in the States, and that included shipping them, installing, flying people out, and certainly some of the other stuff that you do in terms of the bespoking. And I know you'll talk a little bit more.
Also, that was during COVID when there was an absolute nightmare on shipping, but we won't go there.
And again, we again with the certainly with the law firm, that's one of the other sides that we're looking at very much so, is that a law firm will typically want some bundles made up because they're going to court tomorrow. A lawyer will be working until late in the evening. The post room will be closed, or the mail room will be closed. They've now got the advantage. They can take the bundles down, drop them in the locker, and as soon as the mail room guys and the post room guys come in the next day, then they can take the stuff straight out of the locker, print it. And again, it's that whole two-way communication thing that the lawyer will know that it's been picked up. They know there's a secure chain of custody from their client access point of view, and then they can come down in the morning, either pick it up directly from the mailroom or pick it out of the lockers in terms of that. So, yeah, I guess that's kind of some of the stuff we've been doing.
Brilliant, thank you. I've got a quick question. When you're consulting on this basis and you're introducing technology, whether it be our lockers or just general software, how do you handle the client when they ask you how much and how long is it going to take to pay what's my return on investment?
Yeah, I guess it's always the hardest one, isn't it? Because whatever you tend to do when you're changing things for a client, it's going to cost money. Whether you're buying new chairs or whether you're redesigning a whole building. And I think probably two things really. One is around case studies. So talking to other clients, and again, what we've found certainly with your lockers is there's an ROI in terms of people. So it's reducing the number of people that are required to run the back office service within the business. And also in terms of error rates. So again, things being brought down, I left it on a desk, wasn't there. And certainly with COVID and post-COVID working, things like IT equipment. So if my mobile phone breaks and I'm not going to be in the office till Friday, IT can now preset one up, put it into one of your lockers, and as soon as I'm in, I can collect it. Rather than potentially on Friday, the IT desk might not be there because Friday's the day where they decide to work from home. So again, there's then a strong chain of custody, it's secure, and it gives me an experience as an end user of how it works. But yeah, it is a hard, but I think what you can show is where we've done the audit in terms of what their current state is and what the state is in the future, that technology enables that change, and that change over time reduces their overall, both their operating expense and some of their softer costs as well, because they're giving the end user a much better experience. So yeah.
Brilliant, thank you. One thing I want to really sort of touch on as well is that a lot of people don't really know what a smart locker is, and it's as simple as a cabinet that is being run by software, and then it's the software that's adding the value. And a lot of people still think it's just something you put your personal belongings in while you're at the gym, or your bags while you're working, but really it can do so much more. And that's what we're trying to do together, to try and add that value, because it can manage assets and add a massive difference to the chain of custody. You can hand items between staff members. The dynamic workplace these days is that someone doesn't have a desk, like you were saying earlier on. How do you leave something for someone who doesn't have a desk? Pigeonholes are just unsecure, so a locker can do that. And then you've got obviously the data that comes with it as well. How many people are in the office at that time, how many packages are being collected at that time, and that data is what then can help drive change for that client.
Yeah, I quite like the fact that unlike static lockers, everyone knows what a locker looks like. And to be fair, Jonathan, your lockers don't look that much different to a standard locker. But with the technology that's running them, the software, one of the things that I quite like is the fact that you can manage what's in there. Certainly where we found with a recent media client is that they've had lockers that haven't been opened in about 12 months. So, that's real estate that's being taken up, that's not being used properly. And through your software, certainly if they're using it either for personal use, or they're using it as a pedestal, or you're using it for your IT or other equipment, you can monitor what they're doing. You can pick up how long someone hasn't been in there. And effectively, you can also move stuff to longer term storage or potentially off site in terms of that, rather than using up vital real estate at your front line. You can move it further back, I think, in terms of that.
Yeah, and I think we're also improving the client experience. As we're showing here, we've got mobile credentials via HID and the guys here at Smart Spaces. And I think if you've got a building that's offering that, coming into the building with one app, accessing a locker with one app, collecting the mail out of one app, you've got a nice sense of security, a great experience. There's no faffing around for your bank card or your access card. I just think it's just generating a real great feel for that member of staff.
Yeah, we've got a client at the moment, a large global law firm that's moving their offices in London, and they're looking to go completely cardless. So again, it's that whole using your phone now. I think there was a bit of reservation a few years ago about using your own phone, particularly if it's your personal phone or your work phone. But I think it's moving more and more towards my phone now dictates what I do. Whether I'm collecting a print job, collecting my mail, depositing stuff, or buying a coffee in the restaurant. So, I think that's definitely been one of the biggest shifts in terms of that.
Brilliant. I think that's added quite a lot of value for me anyway. I don't know if you guys have got any sort of questions for us while we're up here.
Are you allowed to say what law firm that is you're working on?
No.
Oh, cool. Because I think we might be working on the same project. I think. Yeah, we have a chat offline. But no, thanks so much for taking the time to present. It's been really insightful. What do you think's next? Like sweating these assets really effectively. And, totally agree with everything that was said. One of our clients has got a smart locking system, Hublock system in London, but they haven't got it in their Birmingham office. And it's exactly what you said. They found that people who had left the company 3 years ago, when they unlocked the lockers, their stuff was still there. And obviously they'd gone home with the keys, and all they had all the time in their Birmingham office was requests to buy more lockers. And actually, once they switched it, they got that space back. Once they switched it over to a digital system. So what do you think's next in terms of another asset you could sweat like that? I know that people are being more efficient with their towels in the changing rooms by putting tags inside them. We now tag the bikes in the ACP or active commuter park, so we know how many spaces there are. But what would you think the next thing you would say should be digitized?
Ooh. Do you want to answer that? You're better at that than me.
If I had anything to say, I would. I'm not sure. The next thing to be digitized, yeah. I need to get these questions before we have to sit up here and answer.
Sorry.
I don't know, but what I do know is that we can take. So the premise of this is smart lockers being a backbone for. I know that when we're talking to our clients, there's so much more that they're using them for now than they've ever used them before. So maybe what they're doing is, instead of digitizing current non-digital infrastructure, is they're learning that once they do digitize it, there's so much more they can do with it. So they've gone from storing some stuff to using it as a place for people who are moving desks around and don't want to be in one place all day, to vending IT equipment for an IT department, to having a chain of custody for really expensive kit, to lawyers putting contracts in them so that they can get printed out or multiplied for them so that they pick up in the morning. They don't have to stay there all night waiting for the guys to do it. So really more and more use cases for the same, for the stuff once it's digitized.
Yeah, and it's that dynamic permissioning, isn't it? The fact that you can give someone access to that locker for 10 minutes, for an hour, for a day. You can switch the access and have a chain of access. So like someone deposits something and then the access goes over to the next person who's going to collect it. I think obviously it really helps. And I think one of the things that might be helping you as well is Amazon have stopped putting the lockers into a lot of the office buildings because of the critical mass, but you still need that service. So if you can come in and offer a private version of that, which Amazon, but all the other people delivering services to the building can use, it's a great business opportunity.
I've thought about what's kind of next, if you like. I maybe not quite on this, but I think probably one of the biggest changes that's going to come up is the use of AI. So we're providing some support to a client. They're a newspaper group, and they're moving to an AI platform. So if you think about a traditional journalist, obviously goes out to write an article. So I'm just going to come and see us about Bryn Mawr. So they'll typically turn up and sit there with a notepad or a digital recorder, and obviously ask us about Bryn Mawr or even this, workplace transformation. They'll go back to the office and they'll write the piece. They're now using AI to interact between the two. So first of all, to pre-prep the journalists before they come. So they've now got, so that they can drop in and say, Bryn Mawr, workplace management, workspaces, smart lockers. So they've got better prime questions when they're turning up. And then when they write the article now, they're able to now drop sentences in which produce paragraphs. So I think if anything's going to change, I think it's the digitalization of the message. I think it's going to become less personal as in I wrote all of these words. Now, my English isn't the best, but if you're writing something now, you're almost dropping 2 or 3 key sentences in that's then going to produce you a whole letter or a whole article. And again, I know some firms that are using it for tender returns. They're using AI now. They'll drop it into ChatGPT.
Yeah,
so,
no, certainly. But I was going to say, is Omar in the room? He's not in the room, is he? But maybe Charlotte can answer the question. How much of our Smart Spaces magazine was written by AI? How much of that is ChatGPT? I reckon Omar's article was definitely a ChatGPT article. But no, brilliant. Thank you.
So I think that's one of the things they look at. How do you use it properly? Because I think it kind of swings between using it for everything and having almost no human interaction and no personalization to, just totally personal.
It's a trade-off on the efficiency, is it? I think, you're willing to have the efficiency, but you are giving away a bit of personal touch. But that personal touch is going to improve over time.
I mean, sticking with AI as well, that data that either lockers or general, building apps would have as well, if that AI could extrapolate so much information out of that and bring it to an easier to understand picture for a lot of people as well, because that data will be quite hard to understand. So I think that will happen as well. Anyone else?
Gentlemen, the key stakeholders when you're talking about making investments such as smart lockers in today's world, how do you get that across them about the customer experience? And because they go in with a certain heading, particularly the red pen with looking at the numbers, how do you overcome some of those barriers?
They have to. So it's dependent on the situation. Obviously, there are clear ROIs for some firms. So John was talking about our friends in North America reducing headcount by half. That's a massive ROI that they've got just through using lockers as a backbone for a complete solution. But the biggest hurdle we have to cross for change is often the decision maker, rather than the person who's using the service. So what we try and do is get them to take a view from the people who are using the service. So we see people who they want to have working for them in their business. They want to have a frictionless experience. They want to have they want to have something that's more like their experience at home. We see firms. We do a bit of work for BP. BP have got rid of all their reception desks. They've got people who you walk up to and they come and say hi, and they talk you through, because people don't want reception desks anymore. It's the same sort of thing for this kind of thing. So to make a frictionless experience, put yourself in the shoes of the person who's going to be using it. And we try and get our stakeholders who sign in the check to think about that, to think about why they want a more frictionless experience, what this kind of infrastructure can do for their business in terms of making it a nicer place to work, an easier place to work, a place where your experience at home is the same as your experiences in the office. And I think that's quite a powerful message, because user experience and staff retention are really, really big for stakeholders, especially the more senior they are. But they're normally old and cranky and don't really get it. So they have to we have to get them to think about experience.
Anyone else?
Okay, thanks very much.
Well, thank you very much.